4.5 billion years ago, there was no blue horizon, no clouds drifting across a sky, no oceans breathing against the shore, only a newborn world, suspended in darkness, orbiting a young and restless sun. Around that star, a vast disk of dust and gas turned slowly, like a cosmic storm frozen in time, and within that storm, gravity began to gather the future. Particles collided in silence, grains of dust touching, clinging, merging, becoming pebbles, stones, mountains in motion. There was no gentle beginning. Every moment was an impact, every collision a flash of heat. Worlds were not born peacefully, they were assembled in violence. The young Earth was not a planet of land and sea, it was a sphere of fire. Its surface was an ocean of magma, glowing red, white, and gold waves of molten rock rolling across a horizon that never cooled. There was no ground to stand on, no solid place to rest, only liquid stone stretching from pole to pole. Above that inferno, the sky was not blue but black, filled with vaporized rock and choking gases. Hydrogen, helium, carbon dioxide, steam rising endlessly from the molten surface. Lightning tore through the darkness, illuminating a world that had never known calm. Deep within that molten ocean, something invisible was happening. Heavy elements, iron and nickel, began to sink toward the center, pulled downward by gravity, forming a core of metal at the heart of the planet. This descent of metal was silent, unstoppable, and it created the hidden engine that would one day generate a magnetic shield, protecting life that did not yet exist. But the young world was not alone in its orbit. Another body moved through the inner solar system, a wandering protoplanet, massive, glowing, unstoppable. We call it Theia. For millions of years, it shared a path with the newborn Earth, until the distance between them disappeared. The collision was absolute. An entire hemisphere melted in an instant, oceans of magma thrown into space, mountains vaporized into plasma, the surface transformed into a global sea of fire. The sky itself became molten, glowing fragments raining back onto the shattered world. From the debris that circled the wounded planet, a ring of fire and stone formed, and within that ring, gravity began its quiet work again. Over time, the fragments gathered, fused, cooled, and a new world was born, the Moon. Closer than it is today, enormous in the sky, pulling at the molten tides of Earth, stretching the crust, slowing the planet's spin. Day and night were shortened, then lengthened, the rhythm of time itself shaped by this newborn companion. The Moon became a stabilizer, a silent architect of balance. For millions of years, the surface of Earth tried to cool. A thin crust formed, cracked, sank back into the magma, reformed, shattered again. The planet was restless, alive with heat, its surface constantly destroyed and reborn. Then came the bombardment. Asteroids, comets, fragments of unfinished worlds fell from the sky in endless waves. Each impact carved craters, melted rock, boiled the surface oceans that were only beginning to form. Yet within these violent visitors, there was a gift. Locked inside stone and ice was water and the chemical ingredients of life. Steam rose into the atmosphere, thick clouds forming for the first time, rain began to fall. Not for days, not for years, but for millions of years. The rain struck hot rock and turned to vapor, fell again, cooled again, until at last a water remained. The first oceans were born. They were dark and mineral-rich, heated from below by volcanic vents, stirred by tides from the close and massive moon. Lightning flashed above them, heat pulsed beneath them, and within those waters, chemistry began its long experiment. The atmosphere was still hostile, thick with carbon dioxide and methane, the air unbreathable, the sky a permanent haze. The sun was dimmer than it is today, yet the greenhouse gases trapped heat, keeping the oceans from freezing. A delicate balance formed, not by intention, but by the physics of a young world finding equilibrium. Beneath the oceans, along cracks in the crust, hydrothermal vents released heat and minerals into the water. These were places of energy, of gradients, of possibility. Molecules formed, broke apart, formed again, becoming more complex with each cycle of heat and cooling. On the surface, tides flooded and retreated across volcanic shorelines, creating pools where water evaporated, concentrated, reacted, and returned to the sea. Wet, dry, hot, cool, a rhythm that drove chemistry forward. The continents did not yet exist as we know them. Small fragments of crust floated like islands on a sea of magma below. They collided, merged, broke apart, and slowly, over unimaginable spans of time, the first stable landmasses began to appear. Inside the planet, radioactive elements released heat, driving convection in the mantle. The crust moved, recycled, reshaped. This was the beginning of tectonics, the slow engine that would build mountains, open oceans, and regulate the climate of the future. The magnetic field strengthened as the core churned, forming an invisible shield that deflected the solar wind. Without it, the atmosphere might have been stripped away, the oceans lost to space. Instead, the shield held, and the planet kept its air, its water, its potential. Time passed in millions of years, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. The bombardment slowed, the crust thickened. The oceans deepened. The sky, once black and violent, softened into something closer to blue. And somewhere in the sheltered corners of this restless world, the first life emerged. Not animals, not plants, but microscopic organisms, cells that fed on chemistry and heat. They left faint signatures in ancient rocks, whispers of metabolism, hints of replication. Life had begun its quiet work. From that moment onward, the planet and life would shape each other. Microbes would alter the chemistry of the oceans, then the atmosphere, releasing oxygen over billions of years. Rocks would record their presence. The sky would change color. The surface would transform. But all of it, every forest, every coral reef, every human city, traces back to that beginning, a molten sphere in a storm of debris, a world born not in peace, but in collision. Earth did not begin as a paradise. It began as fire without air, rock without water, chaos without life. Yet within that chaos, the foundations were laid, a core that generates a shield. A moon that stabilizes the tilt, oceans delivered by cosmic messengers, continents rising from a cooling crust, chemistry learning to live. We walk on the cooled surface of an ancient furnace. We breathe an atmosphere forged by volcanoes and microbes. We live because a violent beginning created the conditions for balance. 4.5 billion years ago, Earth was not blue. It was a glowing ember in space, a survivor of collisions, a planet forged in fire and rock waiting for life to awaken.